quick question for Bobby.
Yes.
Bobby, you mentioned asset classes. You mentioned asset classes. Define asset classes when it comes to movies and episodics, and what kind of asset classes are investors like you looking for?
Well, I think Ted actually mentioned that. Ted's the
I like massive.
yeah. I haven't heard before Ted actually about that. I'm going to let him answer.
Mortgage is the leverage on that house. When you buy a piece of real estate, there's some things you have to do to maintain that real estate. You got to pay the real estate taxes. If it's a brick building, you got to do tuck pointing every now and then, or the house is going to fall apart, right? Content is similar. It's got its own unique, weird rules. There's different laws around intellectual property, and if somebody can copy your song someplace, there's laws that affect that. So you need to understand the nuance of how you get paid for content and what your rights are as a content owner. But I would argue in the digital era, in the post-iPhone world, content is an extremely attractive asset class. There are screens popping up everywhere that people need to fill with pictures and with sound, okay? And people pay for those pictures and that sound. And how you monetize pictures and sound to those people, it's an emerging thing. This is very much an evolving thing. Nobody knows the silver bullet to this. By the way, that's the opportunity of Chicago. LA has been doing this for a very long time. They've been doing it extremely lucratively and successfully for a very long time, and they monopolize traditional distribution methods. You cannot be successful in theatrical distribution without talking to people, certain people that Bobby knows well, in that world. And they dominate that. The fact is, though, moving forward, that's not the only way to distribute content, and I think that's the opportunity of Chicago. We are not embedded with any traditional distribution methods. We can invent a new way of doing it, a new way of monetizing content, and I think that's our opportunity. But I don't think anybody knows how to do it. It's an emerging asset class.
So I feel like we should applaud you. That was great. I had something to say. So for me, it was really interesting. So I was working as the executive producer at The Onion when they moved to Chicago here, and so I was watching them transition from paper to only digital as a company, and so the back of my head is on the front page of the last Onion article ever printed. It's in the back corner. Love that. But it was really interesting to see how they kind of restructured and navigated that transition from journalism-based print into a content asset class that they're then selling to their advertisers. And with The Onion, it's really interesting because they have their own in-house distribution. So when we're creating deals or campaigns, or we did a whole series with the NFL and Lenovo and a bunch of football players. The NFL and The Onion don't really get along very well, as you might imagine. But we were putting together that package for the NFL and for Lenovo. It was all of like half of it, if it's $1 million package, like maybe half or often less, was put towards physical production, and the rest of it was put towards the distribution of that particular piece of content. Now, in the Onion world, it's all in-house. So they're charging the client for like $15,000 for a writer to like tweet to 4 million people or whatever it is. But it was a really, really cool and really interesting place to be. And I think the Onion has made that transition into a digital space and been able to monetize it very well. You know, so this is kind of a side tangent, but I just wanted to share that. It's really interesting to see that evolve.
And it's awesome. And even from when I started in 04, 05 to where it is now, it's a completely different environment. And I agree. The channels are massive. There are many ways to monetize any type of content. Content is king. Does it help to have actors? Obviously, all that stuff. But what I would tell you is that you may know all the channels. So when we started looking, you had domestic, which was Cherry. Everybody think, well, I got the Blair Witch, I'm going to make all this money. Yeah, you're in putts, you know. But you have foreign, you have, you know, you have brand integration, and then product integration, and then you have ultimately, you know, whatever type of subsidy you can possibly get. Well, if you break those down, each category, maybe not the subsidy, brand you can, but certainly domestic, you go to cable, free TV, pay TV, whatever it is. I mean, those channels are endless now to where they were. And Chicago can compete in that. Chicago has the ability, like Ted said, to go from $300 million to billions of dollars. The incentive, while it's not phenomenal because it doesn't include the above line, it's there. There's opportunity, okay? Many episodic shows are here. Why? Because the city's amazing. There's a tremendous amount of talent here. Talent that didn't exist years ago. Okay, it's here. It's Chicago's to lose, and you have to sit there and surround yourself around the right people in order to make it happen. That being said, you might know all the distribution channels, but don't lie to yourself and understand you know how to navigate those channels. And if you don't know how to navigate, and that starts from the foundation, from creating your documents to making sure that you're not going to preclude any type of distributor coming into actual takeover, any type of foreign or domestic type of, or whatever type of distribution it is, okay? If you screw that up, you're done from the get-go, and I've seen that happen many times, okay? And I would tell you is that you have to understand the business lines and the distribution channels. We have to understand and ask the right questions of what do I need to be doing in order to make sure I get access to those distribution channels the right way.
Real quick, I'd just add on that. Like 30 years ago, a guy was a pioneer when he told Fox that he wanted, the director of and writer of a film wanted to have ownership of ancillary distribution rights through merchandising, and now George Lucas is a pretty well-respected guy. And I think that that's sort of, to what Bobby's talking about, maintaining ownership of your intellectual property and all of the different ways that you can monetize that people haven't thought about yet is really important. But I think the other thing that's extremely exciting as far as new channels of monetization, you know, Time Warner, the biggest the biggest publicly traded media, that's probably close enough, up there with Viacom. Time Warner will spend $5 billion in 2016 acquiring content across Warner Brothers, HBO Films, and other properties they own. Viacom is a close second at like 3 to 4.5 billion. But this year, they will both be eclipsed by Netflix, who's going to spend $6 billion acquiring content this year. And that's a company that didn't exist a long time ago, and or not that long ago. And I think it speaks to, you know, the model of opportunity that we have here. But even Netflix, to me, as an independent content creator, I like the iTunes model. I like the idea that if you want to watch my show, you can pay me for the show and I'll give Apple 30%. And it's pretty straightforward, and I can advertise to you on Facebook, and I know what it costs to get an impression on Facebook. And so if I can convert a big enough percentage of a certain demographic to watch a teaser on Facebook and then go rent my movie on iTunes, I know how much money I can make. And I think that's a fascinating model.
I just want to, not to cut you off, but I just want to say, if I know that's my game plan, I better know what it takes to get there. What type of marketing campaign, what type of organic growth, or you're talking about Kickstarter, or whatever else, what am I going to have to do to get there, to get that cash back?
So to that, I would say, and this is a great point. So Bobby, Cutting Edge, in 2004, takes historical data of actors and directors, how much money did they make in the box office, let's predict within some reasonable margin what they're going to make in the future with a new project. Today, we have the ability to kind of make 1 or 4 episodes of a web series, and maybe you spend, I don't know, I'll make up a number. You spend $100 grand and you make 4 episodes of a really well-produced web series. Take another $100 grand and go cut that web series 500 different ways and throw it at a whole bunch of different demographic profiles on Facebook and see which one works. And maybe you might be surprised. You might find out that it's not the episode you thought was the best episode, or it's not the demographic you thought was the best demographic. But you can then go to an investor like Bobby, or better, just go to Goldman Sachs or a bank and say, hey, look, I've got this content, I produced it, we spent X dollars to get 500,000 impressions to this certain demographic, and of those 500,000 impressions, 20% of them converted to watch our show. Boom, I know how much money I need to spend to market that film to make my money back. I learned that from Andy Sullivan, by the way. Years ago, I was pushing Andy. I was like, how do I find out, where can I get good data? It's very easy to find box office revenue data. That's very publicly available. It's much harder to find out how many streams there were on Netflix, or what the revenue flow was from YouTube watches or something else. And I was pushing to Andy. I was like, how do I get that data? He's like, you don't need that data. I'm like, why don't you need that data? What you need is you need to know the conversion rate. You need to know how many impressions do you need to make to get enough people to watch your film to make your money back. And that's just trial and error. And you can get there with a modest 5-figure trial and error budget.
And I mean, I would say on that, at the Onion, we sold impressions. Like, we were guaranteeing the distribution to our advertisers, who are kind of our investors, right? Different type of content, but we were selling impressions, and they did that really, really well. And I think, to your point, it's important to know how to navigate it, recognize when you don't, and do your homework. If you're in the business of filmmaking to be a director and make a film and just have the artistic experience, then it's a totally different conversation. So do your homework. You all have the power to be better, and you all have the power to do the homework and make this happen, but you have to put the effort into it too. And I think that's great, know what you don't know. It's really important.